We spend so much of our lives looking over our shoulders, waiting for a nod of approval or an invisible green light from people who don't give us the vision in the first place. We've become so used to asking for permission that we've forgotten that the only person who needs to agree with your calling is the one who gave it to you. Invalidation from the world is just noise. It isn't a verdict. I want us to look at the difference between validated by people and being established by the Creator. Welcome to Embrace and Become, interior conversations for women becoming. I'm Clara, and in this conversation, we begin from the inside. I'm so excited once again to connect with you all in this space. If this is your first time connecting, you are welcome. And if you've been here before, welcome back. Before we dive in, if you're finding a home in these interior conversations, go ahead and hit follow so we can stay connected. So I'm finding some real gems in the conversations that we've had so far, and I really do hope that you have too. So just to recap, in episode 1's conversation, we looked at where our personal and our individual journey starts. And if you can remember, I was mentioning about embracing the fact that we've been showing up, perhaps more than we realized. In episode 2's conversation, we looked honestly at our inner jars, those survival patterns we've been carrying for so long. But the goal of that audit wasn't to look back with regret. It was simply just to clear the space for what is costly to us and true. This is the third conversation in our launch series, and today we're moving into the place of authority. As we continue the formation arc, which is recognizing, redefining, and repositioning, we move from the recognition of what we've been carrying into the repositioning of our authority. So we didn't do any weightlifting in episode 2, but we did do some weight dropping. And we're going to see that once you decide to stop carrying the old weight, the very next thing you'll probably face is the question of whether you have the right to stand in the new space, in your new space. So today we're moving from the audit to the establishment, and why your seat at the table was never up for a vote. I really want us to address the one thing that keeps us from pouring that costly oil, and that's the fear that we aren't qualified enough to do it in the first place. So I remember starting the previous conversation touching base on pattern, and another pattern I feel and we see that is quite evident most times, might not always be so obvious, to be honest, is the validation trap. Now, I know it's not something that everybody may want to admit that they do or they don't do. I mean, they expect or they don't expect. But I think that everybody comes to a place in their life. Every woman does come to that point where they're actually looking up to someone to validate them. And you know what? There's a beauty in having people that you look up to and you want their validation. I mean, you as a child, you look up to your parents. As a sibling, you might look up to your older sibling. Even your friends, even just people that have really poured into your life. So it's not necessarily a negative thing to have people that are like somewhat really positive benchmarks, positive references, positive and trustworthy counsels or counselors. But I'm talking about the validation trap that really should not matter. I'm sure that we've all had these moments where we're about to step out into something new, maybe a new boundary, maybe a new project, maybe a new venture, a new skill, a new hobby, or just a new way of carrying ourselves. And we find ourselves looking over our shoulder. You've done it, I've done it, we do it. And, we get to this place where we're just waiting for that nod of approval. It's like an invisible green light from your friends or your family, like I said, or even from the people who haven't even walked a mile in our shoes. And we've become so used to asking for permission that we've forgotten that the only person who actually needs to agree with our calling is the one who gave it to us in the first place. And also ourselves, who are responsible to being great and confident custodians of such a calling. Yet we're most of the time so exhausted just because we're trying to win a vote that isn't even being held. And I think it's something to really look into, something that we can just sit with and really think about this, because on embracing your life and where you've come from, where you're going to, embracing the experiences and the encounters, the different learning points and pivotal points in time, you'll find that in your becoming, as you're evolving, there's a shift. There's such a shift, and when that shift happens, how you show up will really determine how firm you'll feel in just continuing in that new place of evolving. And really, here's the truth. I want you really to sit with me today and just listen to this. When it comes to invalidation really is just a noise. If you think about it, it really is just a noise. It actually isn't a verdict. It's not a verdict. People can have an opinion on your journey. People can have an opinion on your relationship. People can have an opinion on how you look, on how you speak, on how you present yourself, on so many things. And I always say, they're allowed. It's their right. It's their fundamental right. But they don't actually have a vote on your value. Now, I know as women, sometimes we can find ourselves in a very vulnerable place, in a very testing place or testing time in our lives. I know that you may have really gone through some really great moments, but also some really testing moments. And in those moments, opinions have arisen. They may have arisen as a conclusion for many of you, but they don't have a vote on your value. They don't have a vote on your value. How you came out, how you showed up, what you overcame speaks even more of your value. And it's something you need to pay attention to. If we're going to have some really internal conversations as such, it's something you really need to pay attention to. Remember, the essence is also to know that there is so many people connected to your lives, so many people connected to each and every one of us. There are destinies, there are just so many spaces that need to be filled and need to be met by even others. And the way you specifically show up is not having a mindset or an attitude, well, everyone's thinking of themselves. I'm thinking of, no, literally, people are connected to you. People's destiny are connected to you. And God made sure of that for a reason, for a purpose. And if you're not careful to really embrace your value in certain seasons of your life, no matter how testing and challenging they've been, irrespective of how you've gotten there, and you decide to keep moving forward, but despite you moving forward, you're actually moving blindly, it can really have an effect on how you're going to progress. I really want you to take this with you, that when God establishes something inside of you, it's settled. It's settled. So much has to continue to unfold. So much has to continue to, be explored. But ultimately, it's already settled. It's fixed. It's like the foundation of a house. You don't have to keep checking it. It's breezy outside, it's windy outside, and you're like, oh my gosh, is this house really going to fall? If you know the foundation is being built and it's strong, the house it's built to stand. At least that's the intention of it. It's built to stand. You maintain it as well. You continue to maintain it so that it continues to be strong enough and built in its foundational form to keep standing. And so you don't have to keep checking it. You don't have to keep checking if it's still there just because the wind is blowing that hard. And sometimes winds and storms are blowing in your lives, ladies, so hard, and you feel like you're about to fall. And sometimes you have to go back and question if the foundation was solid in the first place. But ultimately, you being able to identify and recognize and be able to really now redefine your foundation is really what counts, because that's what in essence repositions you. Your job really isn't to spend your life convincing people. Your calling isn't to keep spending your time convincing people that you're qualified. you could be so qualified and someone will look at you and say you're not qualified. So again, it's that confidence being built in you to look at yourself and sit with yourself in moments and know and understand the established truth about who you are, what you are, why you are, and really sit with that. And again, it's not about being boastful. No, there's no need. There's just your value. People can choose to overlook. People can choose to ignore. People can choose to not listen. It's like children or school kids going to school. The teachers are there to teach them. It's up to them to take in what's being taught. And then when the exam comes up, you literally pour in, or you pour out what you've been taught, and going by what you've taken in is what will benefit you. So your job is to simply occupy the space that God has already cleared for you, the path that God has cleared for you. And you don't need a seat at any other table other than the table of God and where you're standing. One of the things that I pick up in most conversations is that there's like an invisible jury in people's heads. I don't know if you can relate with that. Sometimes it feels like it's a constant ground of judging, of really just questioning and so forth. And so it's like it's made up of past critics and even your own internal labels of maybe too much, not enough, to this, to that, not enough of this, not enough of that. And, to be quite honest, it's just like a trampoline of just constant up and down, ups and down, ups and downs. I believe that at times as women, you may feel as if you're constantly on trial. You try so hard, you attempt so hard, you focus, you're sure. And again, there's always something that may bring up a question. But here's the shift. You cannot lose what you didn't earn. You cannot lose what you didn't earn. And if God established your value, no human opinion can devalue that. And I really strongly believe that if someone you look up to is, of course, in alignment with what God believes of you, that will always channel through. You will know if even a sound counsel comes to you that may not even be comfortable, but you will know that this is something that's going to benefit. Sometimes we get counsel that makes us uncomfortable, but I've experienced it, and I truly believe that if it's someone you look up to and it's pure, it's coming from a place of knowing your potential and seeing your potential and really just believing in you and really being there to guide and direct and advise you, then you will know that it's coming from a genuine place. And so it's being able to really even discern that, because it will align with what God has established about you. So no human opinion can devalue it. And remember, Scripture tells us that we're in the world, but we're not of the world. And so it's very, very dangerous to believe in just off the back of being in the world. There's no buts. There's no, it is what it is. And then it comes to this question now, well, who says it is what it is? And that's why it's always the one who's made you, the one who's called you, the one who's given you right purpose, the one who knows you in and out, and the one who you desire, the one who you want to, you want to please, and you want to be aligned with exactly what he says about you and promises you. And most of the time it's just beautiful love. It's beautiful strength, it's beautiful courage, it's beautiful hope. There's no need to fight with that. Everybody's seeking so much validation and so much love externally. Why run away from the direction that you can get it so freely? So invalidation is just noise. It isn't a verdict. It is not a verdict. One great thing about Paul is that he really understood that you cannot walk in your becoming while you're constantly checking the room for approval. In Galatians 1 verse 10 it says, am I now trying to win the approval of human beings or of God? Or am I trying to please people? If I was still trying to please people, I will not be a servant of Christ. And he really understood that your authority, that's you and our authority is really rooted in our assignment and not applause. And sometimes life makes you look for applause because you want to feel reassured, and it's okay. it really is okay. You know, I really believe that sometimes we shouldn't shy away from some of the realities. They may be misconceptions, but there are corrections for that. And so it's just to realign our thoughts, our minds, our innermost part of us back to the place of where you can understand, in actual fact, if I'm constantly looking for applause, if I'm constantly looking for validation, if I'm constantly looking for approval, I'm going to get exhausted. Sometimes that's why women get so exhausted. Sometimes that's why you become so exhausted. I'm sure right now, if you just take a moment to really just think about a time that you really poured into something, or poured into someone, or poured into, you know, and you've just felt exhausted, like crashed out totally, you know. So it's just really about understanding that your purpose has been established, you've been formed, your formation has been established from before you were even born. Before you were even born, you have what is called as being set apart. You know, and the reality of this is that sometimes you only begin to realize, recognize, and even acknowledge your journey of formation, your journey of evolving, when you come to a particular season of your life. And even in those seasons when you're showing up, to be quite frank, the establishing really happened before the showing up began. So even at that point, your qualification was settled. It was settled. It can't be revoked now. And you need to be mindful of not contributing to trying to revoke that for whatever reason, or whatever purpose, or whatever, you know, belief you may have, you know, found to have to believe that. Sometimes it can be hard, I know, especially when we keep looking back at the labels of our survival seasons. You know, forgetting really that those labels don't fit in the woman that you are today. You've come a long way. You've come a long way. I need you to stand up. I need you to shout out, stretch out, look at yourself in the mirror and say, lady, you have come a long way. And you need to embrace that so that you can continue, you can become exactly what those seasons of your what those survival seasons were trying to show you were not. So I'm rooting for you. I'm really rooting for you. I want you to really get some inner strength and break out of a few things. For instance, you've had a pull, some kind of a pull to really start something, I don't know, it could be a project, it could be a way that you're leading in at work, or it could be connected to your careers, the way you're showing up in your family or in relationships, in your community, in your church, you know, in ministry. And, you know, you don't start simply because you think you need one more approval or one more certificate, you know. Maybe you need one more year of just taking time out, one more year of just having your best life, as they say, or, you know, you just need a perfect track record. Remember, you need to embrace the authentic parts of your journey. You need to be able to embrace that, because you can get stuck in saying you want to erase your past, you want to erase certain things that just are still sticking with you. And it will only really remain the way it is currently, or the way that it has been for a long time. Perhaps because you've been in that inner place inside of you without being able to really honestly handle and deal with what's in front of you. You know, sometimes confronting yourself is the most difficult thing. Standing in front of yourself is the difficult thing. And sometimes that is what actually is stopping you, because ultimately you've already overcome that season. You're out of it. You are out of that season. You're out of the season of being validated by someone whose validation just did not count and did not matter. You're out of that season of you couldn't do the best that you could because you thought you couldn't. You're now doing, you're showing up. You're out of it, you know. The truth really is that you're just waiting for internal permission now, because sometimes not just external permission, it's also internal permission. And only God can grant that to you. So again, I really press in to say to you today, you are qualified. You're not unqualified. You're just in what may appear to be like a waiting room, you know, that God really didn't ask for you to sit in. And so as you're dwelling on some of these things in your heart, I really just want you to think about that. Think about the labels of survival that you keep placing on yourself. You know, you've really come a long way. You've moved past the hard season. You've moved past the season of maybe grief, maybe, you know, depression, stress, you know, even mistakes, even burnout. And yet you still describe yourself by that season. Just like episode 1, your story doesn't necessarily start where you think it does. You showed up with a strength that you were not even aware of, because you were made to feel like you were the weaker one. You were made to feel like you didn't have it in you. Teachers can do that to people sometimes. Family members can do that to people sometimes. Friends can do that to people sometimes. And so it's easy to feel like a fraud. It's easy to feel like, you know, every time you try to walk in authority, because your brain still sees, you know, the woman at the well with the water jar. So instead of seeing the woman with the message, with that value inside of her, that is what happens. But you're measuring your current authority by a version of you that no longer exists. I want you to hold that very firmly. Because the more you do, the more you will understand your position. The more you understand you're making an intentional choice to shift and redefine certain perspectives about yourself and certain perspectives that's been placed on you. And you're allowing yourself to be repositioned. You're allowing yourself to be repositioned. So the qualification, or you being qualified, isn't in your history. It isn't. It's really in your repositioning. It really is in your repositioning. Don't look at other people. You don't have to look at other women unless you're taking something that is going to add value and contribute to your becoming. Stay in your lane. Don't be moved. Don't shake. Don't shift. I'm telling you, it's solid strength. Like it becomes so clear that you actually are becoming much faster and much louder than you actually are. Just like the woman at the well, that flip, that shift was so quick. So you may assume that because you grow, you know, in a place maybe of where not everyone sees you, or maybe where it's quiet, or maybe somewhere that is not so popular or so known, that it isn't established, that your calling is not established, that you're not established, you know, because you've gone through certain seasons that you're not. No. That's you disqualifying yourself, because again, your season just looks like nothing's happening, but that season is really a season of sowing. And you can't look at another person saying that their season looks like a harvest without also contemplating and actually having to accept that before there's a harvest, there has to be a sowing. So if you are in your season of sowing peace, sowing patience, sowing courage, sowing endurance, sowing tolerance, you need to understand that there's a harvest beyond that. There's a harvest beyond that. One person's harvest is not your disqualification. No. Authority is not a competition. It is not, I said it earlier on, it is a stewardship of the ground that God's given you, of the talent that God's given you, of the blessing that God's given you, of the vessel that you are, that God has made you. And your perspective, or the way you've been looking at yourself might have shifted because of you've turned in a certain direction, or you started to think in a certain way, or you may have found yourself in a different position than you thought to, but remember, you are made in the image of God. So you are beautiful, you are powerful, you are courageous, you are strong. Hey. So I want you to take that with you today. I don't want you to embrace any longer a false perspective. You don't need people to agree with your calling for it to be real. You don't need people to agree with what is conviction to you for it to be real. The truth of the matter is, and the right perspective to have, is you saying to yourself, I'm standing on ground that was established way before I ever took a step, and my job isn't to convince others. I'm letting go of that exhausting, self-inflicted career. Really. Let it go. Let it go and occupy. Let it go and occupy. Occupy the space that God's given you. Stop waiting for approval. Stop waiting for unnecessary approvals, and step. It's time to really just step into the authority that's been given to you. Step courageously, and remember, just get started. Start loving again, start giving again, start creating again, start stepping again, start dreaming and hoping again for that job, for that position. Yes, you can be whom you've desired to be in alignment with the will and purpose of God. I'm telling you, walk in that authority and do so with humility. Do so with humility. As you know, we usually round up with a question that's coming. And I quite like this question. I really, really do. How do I stop caring about what they say when they are so loud? How do I stop caring about what they say when they are so loud? So I would have to say to you is that you don't stop the noise by arguing with it. There's a tendency to really, and look, we're humans, hands up, we're humans. But there really is an easier tendency to try and defend your case, defend yourself, and just argue with what's been said. But you really don't need to. You need to really just stop. Just stop it by outgrowing it. Anything that's come loud, it might be, again, something, someone, somewhere, whatever that thing is, just outgrow it. Outgrow it. Let it speak what it needs to speak, but you need to outgrow it. And when you become so focused on what is established, I'm telling you, the voices of invalidators just lose their volume naturally. It just starts to phase out. At times you're mindful and you see it, and other times you don't even realize it. Oh, it's a bit quiet around here. So try not to argue. Try not to argue with that noise. Try not to argue with that invalidation, with those opinions. Again, take this. I say it's their right. And again, please allow yourself grace. If you do find yourself in that position where you do happen to argue or defend, because defensiveness, again, it's something that's formed, over a period of time, it becomes a part of you. But remember, it's just, what is it that is knowing again? What is it that should be in you so that you can pour out? Whatever was in you is something that we're believing and we're praying, and we continue to shift it out of ourselves. Shift it out. It's not supposed to be a part of us. And we have literally an exchange. And so this is one of the ways that you can do it. Just be more intentional and more conscious of the fact that you don't have to argue what your manager's arguing about, saying that you're not fit for the role, fit for the job. Don't argue it. Do your thing, and the results will show. Put in the hard work and the results will show. People know. People know when you're up one on them. People know when you've got a certain amount of value that they don't have, and they will try their utmost to cry it down, to stop you, to ridicule it, to mock you, to even really convince themselves that they are in a better place, that they are better off than you are. And you just need to flow in your own direction. Leave them be. And at the end, what you produce is going to be poured out of you, and everybody will hear and everybody will see. And so at the back of that, we usually give our application challenges for what you could take away with you from this conversation. I really want you to identify the jury. I was speaking about having this type of jury in our minds. Really just name, an opinion that's really had some kind of effect on you, that's made you to have to say stop or pause or I don't know, or question yourself. That jury could be a person, that jury can be, an opinion. Like I said, it could be a scenario, a circumstance you're actually currently going through, or a challenge that you're currently going through. Just try to identify, when you're intentional about something, you're actually envisioning the very thing that you're trying to overcome. Like I said, you cannot conquer what you don't confront, and you cannot confront what you don't acknowledge. So acknowledge that there is something. Otherwise, you'll not be showing up with a wavering posture of your authority. So really try to identify that inner jury, whatever it is or whoever it is. Just try to identify that thing that is always making you say, oh, stop. That's making you put up that stop sign in yourself or in your mind. And really then declare the establishment. Like I said to you earlier on, say out loud, my value is established in God. And it is not up for a vote. My value is in who I know I am, and not in what others think they can vote in or vote out. And then really just take action. Do one thing. Just find something that you can do intentionally this week that you've been putting off simply because you were waiting for permission or you thought someone had to. For some of you, it might be that you need to put in an application for a job. Some of you might need to step out of certain dynamics and certain environments. For some of you, it needs to be starting that business. For some of you, it needs to be really just engaging more. Just take action with something you've been putting off because you've been waiting for permission. You've been waiting for someone to tell you need to leave, or you need to start doing this, or you need to go over there, or you need to consider this. Just in your own inner self, try and identify that. So remember, identify the jury, declare the establishment, and take action. So before we go, if this conversation gave you permission to really reposition yourself into a positive space, please share it with another woman who needs to know she is already enough. And to let this reach out to even more women all over the world, please do follow and subscribe to stay connected, but also it does help support other women reach this conversation. Take a breath and remember, you don't have to prove what is already true. You are not uncertain. You are becoming. Until next time, embrace and become.